ClickUp 4.0 is finally here. It is a massive upgrade to one of the best productivity tools in the entire world. It's available for all users, and if you're using ClickUp 3.0 today, a mandatory migration to 4.0 is coming, so you will be using ClickUp 4.0 in the near future if you're not already using it. And like with any big update, there are a million questions to answer. So what do I need to know about ClickUp 4.0? What are the best new features? How do I take advantage of them? Where do I apply judgment? And I actually don't lean into some of the new stuff that's out yet. And there may be reasons to stick with some of the old stuff. Or what do we go and invest extra in to make sure that we're digging into what's new and taking advantage of that? How do we deal with this from a change management perspective and communicate it to the team? I want to answer those and a bunch more questions here in today's video. My name is Gray McKenzie. I'm the founder at ZenPilot. Since 2018, we've been partnered up with ClickUp. We're their first ever solutions partner. We've helped over 3,000 teams streamline their operations in ClickUp. We've had the chance to help hundreds of teams migrate to 4.0. We've been using 4.0 internally for almost an entire year at this point. And so I just want to take all those lessons learned and translate them to you here on YouTube. Make sure that you're subscribed to our YouTube channel. We put out a show called ClickUp Weekly that comes out every single week, walking through what's new in ClickUp and lessons learned over the course of the past week and kind of the cumulative result of the knowledge that we're building and experience that we're building working with clients here at ZenPilot. And so there's a lot of great content. There's also other content coming out on specific areas very consistently as well. Okay, so let's dig into ClickUp. I've got a ClickUp doc that's pulled up for us here. And I want to talk about some of the winners and not yet winners and some of the big changes. So like the very first thing you're going to notice with ClickUp 4.0 is the navigation as opposed to 3.0. We've got quite a bit of change. So we have all these different hubs in our navigation that we can customize, pick and choose. We can say, hey, I want this stuff turned on or not turned on. I'm going to walk you through exactly what you ought to do and probably recommend to your team with that as well. There's a little bit of a change in favorites. You can see I've got a couple favorites here. I've got a couple things favorited there. If we opened up the sidebar, I've got favorites here in this section. So let's make sense of each of those areas. I've covered that on a ClickUp Weekly previously, but let's talk about that. Custom sections in the navigation. We'll walk through each of those things. My big winners, the very first one I called out in this blog post, which you can also see at, let's grab the URL here, ClickUp 4 review. I called out a handful of these, and so Teams Hub, I think, is one of the very best new features. So let me just show you what that actually looks like when we're in here. So you can see, again, if you don't have that turned on for you, you can go to Customize Navigation. You can select it so that it's always showing there. But Teams Hub, I can pull this up and I can see information about my specific team. So it's going to default here to this workload view, where which I'm going to get to in a second. This workload view, now you can scroll smoothly back and forth between it. There's a lot of customizations to it. I can see what's scheduled, or I can see availability. I can see capacity. All three of those are helpful in being able to zoom in or out timeline-wise. Hey, I'm really trying to optimize where our time goes this week. That's our 7-day or our day view. Or I want to see weeks or even months out because I'm thinking higher level about how are we going to staff up or down in this season of time, depending on the demand and the work that we have assigned out to folks. For most of you, you'll have capacity based off of time estimates. For some of you, you may use another custom field in here, the most common example being sprint points. But we've got a handful of other things as well. We've got an overview. So here's the ability to add some information about your team specifically. You can see a feed of all the activity that's happening. You can see what priorities different team members have, analytics on where they're spending their time. You can bookmark, really helpful resources for your team as well. So this overview is helpful, especially for new users to the team. We can see analytics. This used to be called Pulse. Now this is kind of bundled in here, and we're seeing this across the team. We're seeing priorities. We can see this built out in what almost looks like an old, if you've been with ClickUp for years and years, an old box view version of this, but this is actually pretty helpful. The team themselves, see who's on the team, run a stand-up, see timesheets, all from here. Obviously, most of the time you won't be looking at this, for most of you who are working in larger teams, you won't be looking at this across an entire team. You'll be looking at this in the context of a smaller team. I've only got a couple of folks here in this demo workspace, but I wanted to share this overview because this is super helpful. What this means for you is you need to think about how you're setting up teams. So in your organization settings, you're going to make sure that your teams, you've thought through who's on each team and how do I organize this work to make sense within the structure that that makes sense for your business specifically. This is one of the key things that we help teams with in our blueprint process is designing for all the features of ClickUp. But here's a simple example of it. It's just like, hey, how do teams make sense in the platform, as well as obviously the way that you're conventionally thinking about teams today. Okay, so I wanted to call out the Teams Hub. I think this is one of the big winners. ClickUp's put a lot of work into these different hubs. So having now a docs hub, I can click into and see a list of all my different docs. Obviously, we're highlighting meeting notes and some of the areas in here. A whiteboards hub, I can see all my whiteboards. I can see spaces, which was always our navigation. That'll still be our navigation. We could see it here. We'll go through home to access it most of the time. But a forms hub, this solves a pain point that folks had previously, which is I've got forms built into these different locations, but it's really hard to see where they all are globally. And so being able to see our forms hub is super helpful. Clips, whether you're recording just audio messages or you're actually recording clips out of the tool themselves as like a Loom replacement or a Tele replacement or any of the tools that you might be using now for video messaging. It's nice to have these different hubs in the platform, and Teams Hub, I think, is the most impactful new winner from it. So you want to make sure you've got your team set up to be able to help folks get a bird's eye view from that feature itself. The one thing you can't do, I'll call this out in terms of Teams Hub, that I really want to be able to do is, can I please duplicate one of these views to customize it? Or even better, can I add a custom view here as well? There are a few things I'd like to pull in. I'd love to be able to pull in. Obviously, we've got these analytics and some stuff from the overview. We can link to dashboards, but I want to be able to see some additional metrics, and I'd love to have it here. And I realize part of the beauty of this is the simplicity. So if you let me add unlimited custom views, and now I've got 47 different views here, this is going to get a lot less useful for teams. At the same time, even if that was restricted to 1, 2, or 3 custom views, I think that's in line with ClickUp's ethos of, hey, you work the way that you want to work. So I'd love to see it here, and I would rather have the platform not limit me, but my methodology and my systems design saying, yeah, I understand there are trade-offs. If we let everybody just work however they want to work in the system, we've got a disaster that we can't pull any meaningful reporting on, and our visibility is shot. We might as well be working in 8 different systems. So I understand that. I'd rather have the limitation be my judgment and system design, not the platform itself. So give this feature a 9 out of 10. Teams Hub is really well done in version 1, and there's still room for improvement. As always, that's the exciting part about building any of this stuff. Second one I mentioned, the workload view improvements. So I hit on that one very briefly, but the redesign is so much better. You've got dedicated resource management tools that a lot of teams have gone to. This workload view combined with how you set it up, and you may want 2 different ways that you use workload. You will absolutely need, and if you have not yet read the ZenPilot methodology, I highly encourage you to read the ZenPilot methodology. And in this, we're going to talk about, in fact, I think this would be the 8th principle, but managing resources with bottoms up and tops down resourcing. And you can watch an entire video with a horrible thumbnail, by the way, about how do we do this? This piece is super important, but it may mean that you want 2 different workload views set up to help you do this, to truly try to replace, if you're using another resource management tool, that item. I realize workload is not necessarily going to apply to everybody watching this video, so we'll spend less time on this one. My tasks is huge, and I've got a catch for you here. So if we go to home, this is the new home area. You can see I'm located in a space here, but I've got my inbox. I've got replies. Here's, see what's been, what you've read already or is left unread, draft messages. And then my tasks, there's this drop down. You can see assigned to me, today, and overdue. Well, you didn't used to have something called My Tasks. Now it's finally called My Tasks. We've been teaching and building this for teams for years. So if we zoom out for just a second here, your team needs a uniform way to decide what tasks are, like who owns what tasks, what level of effort those tasks are generally going to take or deserve, and when those tasks are due. Maybe not even due. Like the more abstract way to say it would be priority. What do you work on first, and what comes later? The reason that that's so important is because it is so easy. Like the natural way that the natural thing that happens with any team is we come together, we all agree on the plan, we all go work with the best of intentions, and we slowly drift, or we quickly drift. And now I got pulled in 4 different directions on work. This person asked me if I could help with that. This person told me I need to do this instead. You got pulled on something else, or you got distracted by something else, and we naturally tend to drift apart. So we need a unified way that we agree on priorities and set priorities in the tool, and it's easy to see that. And so in our methodology, we talk about using a due date driven methodology, meaning tasks all get due dates put on them, and we're indicating priority with a specific due date. That's what's going to power things like our workload view, but it's also going to power the ability to see what are everyone's actual priorities. So if we have that set up, let's go back to my tasks here for a second. I can see work that's assigned to me. And then the way that I'm going to look at this, ClickUp by default out of the box is going to group this by status and say, here's a list of all your tasks from all your different statuses that you have going on. That's not a great way to set this up. Instead, I want a different way that we're looking at that. Status is not going to be a very good indicator of priority, but due date could be a much better indicator from what's most overdue to what's due today to what's coming up tomorrow and into the future. So that it should be set up that way. And I like now that you've got that built into this My Tasks area, you can change it to show due dates. Now, because we're going to use parent tasks or tasks and then subtasks, so our parent tasks will function as our milestones, and subtasks will be our individually owned assignments in that task. Because those are going to show up that way, we need to make sure that we show this as separate. Out of the box, it's going to default to collapse. So we need to make some changes here. Now in this view, I can see like what work is assigned. I'm going to filter this out, obviously, for what work is assigned to me. There will probably be some other filters that you're going to want here as well. In this case, I filtered it down for location just because there's so much stuff in this demo space. But I need a view that's filtered down to me across all the areas I'm supposed to be working in and organized by due date. This is the key thing for teams in ClickUp. Like the fact that I still hear this in 2026 is crazy to me, because in 2018 or 2019, this was the same pain point. People are going back and forth between their different spaces, and they've got growth, delivery, operations areas of the business. And inside operations, they're going into HR, and they're seeing work that they need to do. And then they go into delivery and see a client that they need to be delivering for and a contract that there's work for. And they're jumping back and forth to all these different areas to try to see what's on their plate. Well, you need one way that rolls this all up and shows me all of it across the entire workspace. And what used to be called the everything view in ClickUp 3.0 is now called all tasks in ClickUp 4.0. And one of the best features of ClickUp, if you compare it to a platform like Monday or something else, when you've got tasks that live in a list, they roll up into the folder level. All these lists roll up to this folder level, so I can view all those tasks across each of those lists at this folder level. All of these client folders all roll up to this delivery space level, and each of these spaces, all that information rolls up to this everything level. So, we'd build, and I would still recommend this. This is still our recommendation, is that you still have a view called My Tasks here. But for the longest time, this is the only place that would live, and this would be filtered down to show, I'll just grab this as an example. We could filter this down and say, hey, I want this to show, assignee is me. In this case, we aren't actually setting that as a separate filter. We're using the me mode filter for that to automatically do it by team member who comes in and views this view. But you can see we've got all those same settings here. Now, for your team, I'll kind of cheating a little bit. I wanted to share recommendations here towards the end, but I'm gonna mix some of these in as we go. You will still want to use a My Tasks view and tell your team to favorite that My Tasks view. So we'll jump back out of this. Take this view and save it as a favorite. So you can take this, put it in their top, here's what I want it to be called, throw it right on your favorites bar. You're still going to want this set up because there's a few things that you can do here in the view that you can't quite do in the My Task settings. Those are relatively minor, and those are getting changed and updated where there's almost complete parity between this custom view and what you can see in My Tasks. The reason for this is you can set it up and make sure that your entire team is working out of the same type of view with 3 minutes of setup time and then teaching everyone, hey, just favorite that, versus trying to coach everybody on making all the changes here. Hey, I want you to get these columns pushed in. These are not the default columns that you're seeing here, even though this is what most people should have. They don't need a column that shows them the assignee. It's already all assigned to them. They do need due date, and they need it sorted in that order. They will, if you're using a time-driven system, need time estimates and time tracking shown here so that I could see, and you can see this is actually using a resourcing top-down view. So those are less practical tasks. But, I can enter in my time here, quickly save it, whatever. I can comment from here. I can update statuses. I can do all the work that I need to do directly out of this view. So anyways, My Tasks is a big win in ClickUp 4.0. I would still recommend that you use the global, at the all tasks level, a global My Tasks view. But that is pretty cool. We've got obviously assigned to me these sub pages, what's due today and what's overdue. Your personal list, ignore that for now. But you've got a handful of things here that are pretty helpful from the home section as well. Okay, I'm going to jump back here, and I want to talk about ClickUp Chat for just a second. If you're using Slack or Teams or something else, but your entire team is in ClickUp, and if they're not, I think there's a larger question there. But assuming your entire team is in ClickUp, I think you're at a point where you really have to look at ClickUp Chat. We desperately wanted to go Q4 of 2024, desperately wanted to move fully to ClickUp Chat. We'd used Slack for over a decade and absolutely loved the platform. It wasn't a frustration with Slack, but we did feel like, hey, we're constantly being pulled in these two different directions. ClickUp had a couple things with chat that just weren't mature enough to be able to move, and then we made the move officially early Q2 of 2025. It continues to get so much better, and I think there's really only two reasons that would keep you from moving to ClickUp Chat, but I think for most teams, you ought to make the move into ClickUp Chat. And I'll explain what those two kind of catch points are. But ClickUp Chat, you've got all these different channels, direct messages, kind of the normal stuff that you might want to do. You can talk with all your super agents here as well, see all your channels. We could browse through our different channels. You've got threads. You've got all the core stuff that you would want from chat here. So let me go back here for a second. There's two core reasons why I think, if specifically Slack, if you're using Slack or Teams, and why it could make sense. And one is the feature, depending on the tool that you're using, but I was most familiar with Slack from firsthand knowledge, with Slack Connect, the ability for me to stay in my workspace and communicate with a client, a vendor, a partner. They can be in their workspace, but we can use Slack Connect and we're just chatting in our own workspaces to each other. That's a killer feature. ClickUp does not have that feature yet. So if you've got a ton of partners who you're working with, clients, vendors, contractors, whatever that is, obviously contractors, you've probably got a little more influence to say, hey, will you please interface with us now and ClickUp instead of Slack? Clients, you almost certainly have more influence than you think that you do. But I realize there are cases where you don't. And then the other piece would be if you're piping in data from all kinds of different sources, the number of pre-built connectors that Slack has or that Teams has to automatically take data out of your CRM or your financing tool or analytics tools or anything else and push it directly into those platforms is superior to what ClickUp has out of the box. We have spent a good amount of time building out a lot of different custom integrations now to push data into ClickUp. Prior to the last couple months, this took more time to build than it does now. Frankly, now the ability to build custom integrations has just gotten so much easier with the development of AI. ClickUp's API continues to do really well, and the number of tools who've made the integration process easier just continues to grow. So that one's even less of a showstopper than it used to be. But that would still be my other hesitation, is if you're reliant on it for a million different things, like our website chat. I'll just refresh this page, and we've got this HubSpot chat that shows up here. If you chat in on the ZenPilot website and send a chat message in, that's hilarious, by the way, that I'm doing a live demo and it doesn't pull up because it's hidden behind this. That's not good, but also a little bit funny. We'll get that fixed. But if you chat in, HubSpot and Slack have a native connection, and so the HubSpot message would automatically get pumped into Slack. You could reply right from Slack, send it back out through the HubSpot thing. That was really convenient for reducing friction. So that was one we had to build. So now we've built that. If you're a HubSpot and ClickUp user and that would be useful to you, let us know. We've built a million things like that. And we always try to, with any of that stuff where it's like, hey, other teams will benefit from this, we'll make sure that we'll build it in a templated way or with a recipe where we can help connect other people relatively quickly with it. So that's the other big piece, is chat has just gotten so much better in the platform, and the ability to work with all these things, automate, set reminders. This is a big one. The big kind of untouched thing here is super agents, the ability to use super agents in ClickUp natively with all your chat data. And obviously the biggest upside of this is I want everything in one place so that when I'm talking to Brain, I can ask any question. How many comments have we gotten on YouTube? And we can ask any of those questions. And now it's not trying to go, query information from Slack, which I realize has also gotten a lot easier. But it's pulling all this information directly from the workspace, and it's able to, push out and share that information directly inside ClickUp. Okay, so those are the big winners to me. Is Teams Hub. My Tasks is a great step. We're so close in that direction. Chat and the workload view are the four big thumbs up from my side. There's a couple of things I want to call out that are less of a thumbs up. So Planner, and I'll just pull up what that looks like in ClickUp. This is Planner, and you can see, an example here of kind of like, hey, what is that? What does your week look like? The syncing has gotten way better with this. So how quickly, if you make an update in Google Calendar, say you didn't do it from the ClickUp UI itself, the syncing has gotten a lot better, but there's still some challenges with Planner itself that I would love to see get changed. So if we go to this Planner area, and now I want to see all my tasks and figure out how to auto schedule them and move them around, I can click a button and I can have it automatically get scheduled. It's great that it gets scheduled in here, but what I'm pulling from, what tasks I have to work with, this is still there's still room for improvement about, hey, what locations are we pulling from? How does this work? All that kind of stuff. So that's an example of how I'd, pull it out. I can either stop auto scheduling, confirm the work session. There's a lot of good stuff in this, but there's still some room for improvement in Planner specifically. Second thing is ClickUp Sync Up feature. I'm going to try something really dangerous here just because we're doing this live. This will be fun to do. I'm going to go back and I'm going to take Alex and I'm going to sync up him. So here I'm popping open a call. I'll end it. And we'll probably get a call back here in a second. But super nice to be able to call. The other nice thing about that, I probably should have let it go. In fact, let me, if I message ZenPilot, I'm going to, set somebody up for non-success there. So one of the things I love about it is you can have your AI note taker in the tool. So here you can see note taker. I can send it to any call. Well, it can also take all your notes on any of your quick sync ups. This should be a huge benefit, and a huge reason to use sync up is all context, all your tasks, all your messages, all your docs, that all lives here. And even just the casual conversations that you have, all that context is now inside ClickUp if we're taking notes on those things through sync ups. It's still a little clunky though, where if Alex calls me back right now, I'll decline it. And probably 2 minutes later, it's going to pop up on my phone. It might not be 2 minutes, it might be like 10 or 15 seconds later. It's going to pop up and it's just going to keep ringing. I might even be on a call with him and it's going to ring and ring and ring. So there's just some little quirks and bugs in the sync up, specifically like the connectivity. I've had it. I'll open up a call on my phone. Someone's calling me and I'll swipe over, hey, what's going on? Nothing happening. And it looks like the call interface. And then I'll get out of that, go into ClickUp, and it maybe answered the call, but it didn't unmute me at all. And so there's just a couple quirks like that still to get worked through. I don't want to dissuade anybody from using it. It's still got a ton of promise, and I think it's going to be a great tool. Slack huddles, when those came out, Teams calls, they were not super popular at the beginning and then grew over time. This habit will grow and is growing at ZenPilot, but there's still some quirks to it. And so I just want to be honest about, hey, this is where it stands today. And then we just have heard this specifically from folks who are like, hey, we're trying to switch, folks who are not currently working with us, reach out, booking a call. If you want help making the switch to ClickUp 4.0, we can help you make that really easy. You can book a call, zenpilot.com/call, book a call and talk with us. But from those folks, when we jump on calls with them, we just hear a lot of like, hey, I'm a little bit lost. Like my team doesn't know exactly how to use all this stuff. There's this planner and it seems cool. And there's this sync ups feature and like Teams Hub. Like how does it all work together? And the UI is pretty different from a navigation perspective. So what do we do with all of that? So anyways, there's a lot there to cover. I just want to be clear about, hey, these things are like, if Teams Hub is a 9 out of 10 and ClickUp Chat has gotten way more powerful and that's a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10, then like Planner right now is like a 6 out of 10. Yeah, there's room to get better. Sync Up is like a 5 out of 10 in terms of its implementation today. The UI I actually think is like a 7 out of 10. It's really hard to do what ClickUp's trying to do. We've got this idea of converging everything, bringing everything together, which is super smart. I love the approach. I think Zeb's vision from early on, the Zeb Evans, ClickUp CEO and founder, has set them really up really well for this moment in time. But the challenge with that is you've got a million different things that you're allowing your users to do. And so the interface, there's just a lot to try to combine together. So the fact that there are, I want to say 13 different items here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 different items just in the navigation here, that's a lot going on. And then you can go to home and you can pick and choose some different options for what you want pushed in. Do you want to be able to filter for all posts? You can go do that here. Like that's really helpful. I've got it toggled off because that's not like it's one more thing and there's a cost to that. What sections do you want pulled in? What themes are you going to use? By the way, you should use the dark theme and the black ClickUp theme. And the silly little reason for why is when you do that, you just have a different color effect on some of these things on the side that you don't see otherwise. Okay, that's a lot, right? I just threw a lot at you for winners and not yet winners. Let's talk a little bit about hubs and how I think you ought to set up your sidebar. Navigation time. Let's dig into some of the nav and how you ought to set this up. So first thing that you're going to want to set up here is your hubs specifically. And so my recommendation for you would be that you specifically have home saved here, that you've got planner, docs, and timesheet. For most teams, I think that probably is the easiest way to go do this. So home for sure turned on. And actually, I'm leaving out Teams, but I think for most users, having Teams there as well is helpful. And if you're not used to using AI, toggle that one on as well. You can see I've got dashboards turned on, but specifically if your team tracks time, you're going to want timesheets turned on. That's over here, this bottom icon. Here's our dashboards, our Teams Hub, AI, Planner, Chat, and the home feature. Out of the box, I think you get most of these turned on by default. I just look at that. I realize we could expand it and we could even customize the navigation and say, hey, I want labels on with this. That just takes up so much space to go through. And remember, you can hit Command K at any point in time and go to Docs Home. I still don't know why it says Home for some of those things versus Hub, but That's how I would customize the navigation. So certainly turn off goals unless that's a heavy use case for you. Maybe you're in a world where, whiteboards have a ton of use. But I would leave these on. I'll leave AI on for right now, just because I'm going to wind up spending some time with you on that here shortly. But that's how I would set up your core sidebar. Then when we get into kind of like, hey, what does my home look like? So I think you primarily want inbox, replies. We probably also want to show assigned comments if you're using those. And this should be a workspace wide, like you should have a point of view on assigned comments or not using them. But assuming that you've got them turned on, then you want to see, hey, what assigned comments do I have? I mentioned this on a recent ClickUp Weekly, but ClickUp's added this ability to see delegated by me. Obviously, you can see any assigned comments that you own, you're responsible for, but anything that you've assigned to someone else, it's actually a really easy way to go see what you may have assigned to somebody else and say, hey, like let's make sure we follow up on some of this stuff. And that has solved one of the core pain points that I had with assigned comments for the longest time, was they just get lost so easily. So that has gotten better and better. Now, because I think you should not be using this My Tasks feature here, then I would not be using that. Drafts and sent, I think you do want turned on. Posts, you probably do not want turned on. And the rest of this stuff you're going to see naturally anyways. So I would leave the rest of these items off. That brings us to the next navigation section, which is like, hey, what sections do we use here? And so here's what I would recommend. I would recommend you do have a favorite section here because that's built in, that's native. I would add another core channels section. I'm sorry, I don't want a channel here. So create sections. You can obviously reorder sections, and I would call this core channels. And here you're probably going to have, and I've done some content on this before, like our first channel is a general channel. That's where our whole team's hanging out. Then we've got a marketing channel, a sales channel, a delivery channel, a discovery channel, a random channel for fun, a wins channel. You're going to have all these different channels. And if you're interested in seeing, hey, what does that look like? How do we structure that here at ZenPilot? I'm happy to share all of that as well. We could do a video just breaking down that piece. But those would be kind of your core channels. Non-core channels would be like, hey, this client project spun up and we've got this going on, or this short-term project is here. There may be a reason for a channel for that. Then you'd have direct messages. For most of you, you ought to go to unread only for a lot of this stuff and just hide what you've got going on. And then you're going to have spaces down below. So hopefully that's helpful. Let's talk about favorites here for a second as part of this. I'll go back here and just mention favorites. Okay, so we've hit on hubs. Well, let's see if we can type here. So we've covered hubs. We've covered custom sections. Favorites. What's the deal with favorites? There used to be the ability to pin something down to your tray. And the tray used to sit, coming out from the right side of the screen. Now it's down here. It's called favorites. Priorities show here automatically. And if we had no priorities, in fact, let's clear those, that will disappear completely. That's not where you add priorities. It's just what shows priorities. And it'll show a number, and then you can expand that and see it. So favorites. You've got this top bar that you can show. This is like daily views for finding your work. I think you're going to want like the go-to stuff here. You can't pin tasks up here, but you can pin views, and that's primarily what this is going to be. Then in your sidebar, these favorites, these are like, the sometimes, like in these situations, I go see these docs or dashboards or views that I want to see, or even channels. You can add channels here as well. So this is kind of like the handy stuff that you want to see. One of the nice things about favoriting things is it preferences them in search. You can see this popped up right away, where other stuff that also had the word accounting didn't pop up right away. So there is some small benefit as well to the search feature. And then the bottom part here, where you can put docs or tasks, but not views. This one is kind of like temporary tasks and docs. Hey, this is a priority for me right now. I want to make sure I can get back to it quickly, so I can put it here. Obviously, I'm all about being the world's best boss. I'm sure that my team wishes that I was the world's best boss, like, hey, that's important to me in the, in the short term. So this is a task that I'm working on right now. This might be here for a day, a couple hours, or even this might be a theme of my week. Hey, I'm working on this big project. This might sit here for a week as well. All right, hopefully that makes sense with favorites. I know it's a little confusing at first because it was like, hey, we had favorites on the top and we had favorites in the sidebar, but we had a tray at the bottom. Now they're all called favorites. Again, ClickUp's trying to do a lot. I love all three of those, like the ability to put favorites in those places, but I realize that's got a little bit of a learning curve as well. Okay, so we covered favorites. I wanted to spend a little bit of time on the new task view in ClickUp 4.0. So if we go back here to this task interface, what we're going to see is like a decent amount of changes to the views themselves. And some of those changes, we used to be able to see in tabs, like you could see subtasks, but now we've got these collapsible sections. Checklists would live in a collapsible section. Attachments can be collapsed to clean up the view. And so this is, I think, get rid of that. Dependencies now get highlighted better than they were before. So we can relate tasks or docs here. So they're shown like kind of more obviously here. In fact, let's grab we'll put this task here and just relate it so that it's you can see an example of what that looks like. Assigned comments and subtasks. You can see there's a section for that now. So that'll show up as well. And I think this is a big improvement. We used to have the different tabs. You can go back and forth between them. But this view has gotten better as well. You can see some highlights. Here's relationships, how many assigned comments there are. We click that off and that goes away now. This is all about subtasks. And this is kind of a cool feature that it's filtering out and saying like, hey, how many of these subtasks are actually for me? We could get rid of this dependency. Again, we could click here and that would take us down to the section if we didn't have it already visible. We see how many subtasks. We can change task type, all that kind of stuff. Favoriting, some people have said, hey, favoriting got slower. Actually, you just have to highlight it, or because you could pin it to the tray before, and there was a button just to specifically pin it to the tray. Now you just have to hover over this icon and select bottom. Technically, it's probably like, a couple 100 milliseconds slower, but it's the same functional process. You just got to get used to what that looks like. Still have task description, still have the ability to write with AI or do whatever you want. The task description still works great. Version history on that is really good as well. And then depending on what click apps you have turned on or off, that stuff shows here. A couple of these features are not new, but just worth calling out. It's shocking to me how many times I'm on a call and someone's like, whoa, how did you drag that width and change it? Like, that'd be so helpful. We've had all these comments going on. And then people will be like, whoa, wait a second. Like, I can comment or email, or I can tag my super agents right here, and I can ask for, the sales to delivery handoff agent to go do something, or I can even assign a task to them. I guess a couple of those are new features, but just kind of like some of the cool things that ClickUp has are expanding subtasks and being able to see them all in the left-hand side. Like, there's so much you can do in these task views. The really cool thing is like getting this set up the right way for your team. So if you want a hand figuring out like, hey, how do I specifically dial this in for my team? You're showing me 18 different features and like I can only keep up with so many and it's just a little bit overwhelming to do the design. I totally understand. Like, I've hired experts in a million different areas of the business and even personally, because like I know all this information's out there. I just don't want to take the time to digest it all and then assume that my rookie brain the first time trying to apply it all can get it right. I'd rather do this with somebody who's done this 50 times before. So if you want help, reach out to us, ZenPilot.com/call. Okay, that is the new task view. I want to make sure we covered that. And then I've got a couple other things that I want to leave you with. I know this is a long video, but I appreciate you sticking with me. I just want to give you like my brain dump of, hey, here's what's been super helpful in 4.0. Here's what's been a little bit confusing. And here's some things to chew on and think through. So we're going to talk about AI super agents here in a minute as well. So let's jump out of the task view and let's pull up super agents. So let's go to AI here. And you can see your roster. Obviously, you can ask AI, just chat directly with it. You can see your roster of super agents. But there's so many cool AI features in here. Super agents are not the only way to apply AI. We've got AI custom fields, automations, what we can do with automations. And like, there's just so many different ways to use these tools. And it is really important, speaking of systems design and like knowing the best way to apply this stuff, it's super important to know you can use a super agent to accomplish just about anything in the platform or connected to other platforms. A super agent is also the most expensive way to do it. So we could drive all over the place in our Hummer H2, but it's not the most fuel efficient way to get everywhere. And so there's a time to take another vehicle or use another route for it. So knowing, hey, when can we do this with an automation or some other way and not just absolutely burn through credits here, this can be super helpful. I'm going to give you just a couple examples. Sales to delivery handoff agent. So I'll just take you through this. This is part of the 4.0 launch. If I want to build a new super agent, I can go here and I can just prompt for specifically what I want. You will get the worst results, obviously, if you just kind of like, you should absolutely still do it. But if you just kind of like don't think about anything and just go in and say, hey, I'd like you to read my emails and tell me how to reply, there's a much better way to set up and train your super agents. I've covered this a couple different times on ClickUp Weekly already. And I talked about the first 3 super agents that you ought to be creating in your workspace as well. You can see a handful of the other super agents that we've set up in here. Well, they're not named. That's hilarious. So you're much better off thinking through like, what's the workflow? What specifically, and what part do I want each super agent to play in my workflow? You're much better off designing that way than just kind of starting from scratch. However, the momentum boost that you're going to get from just getting in and being like, hey, yeah, that sounds okay. Let's just do that. Is probably going to be so helpful that it's worth it. So I think for most people, what they will do if they're building it themselves, they're going to scan here and they're just going to scroll through and say like, meeting prep. Yeah, that would be helpful. Like, let's try that out. And the prompts here to build this, later for this one, but it's going to ask all these questions, and then you can answer either with custom text or clicking from one of those. I want, dynamic agendas, or I want structured sessions. This build process is actually pretty straightforward to go through and build it. I love how it says alignment there, because, and this would be more clear in some of the other stuff that we've put out around like how to use super agents for alignment specifically. Okay, so I'm going to jump out of the builder for a second just to show you an example of one that's already built. Sales to delivery handoff agent, super common need. Hey, a deal from the CRM got closed. In fact, let's find. We'll find Tool Finder here as a task. I think we still have a task for it. Okay, perfect. So here's the CRM. Let's just pull up the CRM and we'll take a look at it. And let's look at this in a board view. Okay, so Tool Finder, we sent a contract to this engagement. You can see, you're probably going to have some context. Here's a call transcript of a call that we had with Tool Finder, in this hypothetical situation. And then custom fields, we'll pop some of these back open. Deal stage, we'll move it back to contract sent. So in this case, this super agent's set to run when a deal moves to closed won. But we could also tag it in manually if we needed to. If we didn't want that set up, there's a million different ways that we could have set this up. Please run now that the deal has closed. We'll prompt it, and then that'll run for us. But I'll just show you one that I already ran. So it's going to say, whatever. Good job closing the deal. But the big problem we're trying to solve with this is there's all this context that a sales team has that needs to get translated into what the delivery team is going to do with it now. So they need the quick highlights like, hey, what is the scope? What's the goal that we're after? What's the value of this? How do we do billing? You're probably going to need to run this to your billing team. What are the preferences that this client has? What are the open issues where like, hey, we don't have these key things answered, and we need to make sure we answered them. So in this case, this super agent built, a quick doc walking through all of this. And so for the best, like we could ask a super agent to do everything. We could ask it to then go spin up an invoice or create something out of ClickUp that automatically goes and spins up an invoice in QuickBooks or somewhere else and sends it to the client. We could ask it to do the delivery lead, like who's going to take point in this project, to do the assignment itself. We could ask it to fill in any of the missing context, to build out the project plan, all that kind of stuff. But your results with super agents are going to be a little bit worse if you do that than if you say, hey, I'm actually going to take each of those specific components of the workflow, and I'm going to create a super agent that does one or maybe a couple of those if they're related, so that you can train this super agent over time on specifically what you want and how that needs to get built out. So, and you'll see when it's running, you'll see what's happening there. So you may want a different one that is the, your accountant super agent, and it is saying, hey, here's the value of what got built. Now we're going to add this to our MRR dashboard, and we're going to, make sure that we've got renewal tasks and all that stuff set up. We've got a different one who does a great job at looking at our client leads and figuring out who's got capacity, who's got the right skill set to match with this and the personality to match with this, and make a recommendation for who ought to be doing this. There's probably another one that's saying like, okay, well, what templates should we use and should get assigned out and deployed in this case. We could do hours and hours on how to get super agents working well, but super agents are incredible. This is probably the single biggest win. ClickUp 4.0 is a great update. Super agents will actually change the way that you work really substantially. So I could nerd out on super agents with you for a really long time, but I'll pause there. And I want to go back to ClickUp Chat. I want to talk a little bit about convergence and how to manage your team through this change. But I want to go back to chat for just a minute because our recommendations around this, I want you to have all project communication in ClickUp chat channels. And when you're setting it up for the first time and you're running imports from Slack, if you're doing that and those types of things, you've got the ability let's go to Spaces here for a second, and we'll just pull up, we'll pull this up real quickly and say deals. So I could add a channel here, but if I go add a channel manually and I want to tie it back to this location later, I can't do that. So just think about this as you're building it out. Hey, I want to have, a channel for growth, or I want to have a channel for sales. I think it does make sense to build it right into the location. And so we'll take this channel and, we could say whatever info we want about it. Now let's go back to home. Maybe we'll add that as a favorite. And we could take that sales, either list, location, or channel, and add all of those as favorites. And so here's that channel. What's cool about this versus if we just spun up a custom channel called sales 2, but we didn't add it to a list, that one wouldn't automatically, when I'm in the channel, when I go to the channel, it wouldn't automatically have, my views to go see what's happening in that as well. Boy, I didn't even mention the ability to bookmark and bring in calculations specifically are probably the most helpful to have in sales. How many qualified leads have we done in the past week? Pull that in from a dashboard automatically. How much revenue have we closed this quarter? Pull it in from a dashboard automatically. It'll sit at the top of your channel here. So anyways, that's I would move all project communication to ClickUp chat channels tied to client or project locations. So folders or lists most commonly. Move all other internal comms into chat, and you can use free floating channels for that kind of stuff. So wins, I'm not saying go create a list for wins. Have that be a free floating channel. So, just go create a new channel here. I don't know if we already have a wins channel. We do already have a wins channel in this case. Again, another automation hey, that deal got closed. Let's go post about it automatically. It's a simple, super agent example of what we'd want to have. Last thing with chat, when action items arise, make sure that tasks get created right away for accountability. So we could go here and say, hey, create a task. We could say automatically, let AI do it. We could ask Brain and we could give it a prompt. I'm just going to do voice dictation here for a second. Add a task due today for me to send a welcome email to Dunder Mifflin. And wow, I don't know why that is what my dictation app thought, but it's so easy to create tasks out of this that you're going to want to use that feature. and create those tasks and build it out there. Okay. So that's a bunch about ClickUp Chat and some of the intricacies of like, hey, how do we want to set that up itself? I want to spend just a couple minutes on like this roadmap, the idea of convergence. And we've got all these different tools. The ability right now to build, I'll give you an example. Like I am a musician. I'm a pretty poor musician. If I hear, someone's playing a chord or playing a note and I go to play it, maybe I'm 60% right on playing that note. But there's a decent amount of the time where I'm playing around. I have perfect pitch. I wish I had perfect pitch. That'd be an amazing gift to have. So I want an ear trainer. Like I want a little app track my streaks and my accuracy, and it plays a note or a chord, or I can give it, I want more advanced types of chords. I want augmented and diminished chords. Or I just want simple stuff. Like I can kind of pick and choose my difficulty level. I want it to get progressively harder as I get better at it. But I want it to play it and then give me multiple select and say, hey, tap on what you think that is. And then eventually I'd like it to take input back from me, like, that matches up or doesn't match up for my instrument, but whatever. So I built that this past weekend, and it was like 6 prompts total, or 6, like an initial prompt, go through, just plan this first, then help me build it. And anyways, I had 6 exchanges in about 20 minutes for that to be built. So what's the point of the story is not that, I didn't build that thing. I just knew something that I wanted and had some ideas and vision for what I wanted that to look like, prompted and built it to run locally. It would be a little bit more work to go put it up live, but minimal. The idea of convergence, and that's why software stocks are, there's all this threat to hey, there's all these tools out there. They've built great businesses, but are they really great businesses in a world where anybody can just prompt and have an app that's 70 or 80% as good, or 90% as good, or in some cases 110% because it's actually customized to exactly what they want? How powerful are these software businesses? How sticky is that revenue going to be? When are we actually going to get paid back on this stuff? Or are we going to see massive churn as software development gets easier and easier and easier and more commoditized? And so this is a long way of getting to very specific needs are relatively easy to go build for right now. But it's really hard to build the tool that then works for everybody. I've seen a handful of posts on LinkedIn where people are like, hey, I built, we've been on ClickUp, but I built ClickUp in a weekend. And then I see the demo along with it. I'm like, yeah, you built, 2% of ClickUp. And if we put any substantial traffic into it, then this is going to crash. Or, you built 40% of it, but what you're missing here is you're not the only person with preferences on this team. And you don't even need that high-level reporting. What do you do with integration? There's all this stuff. So I think the idea of how do we build in ClickUp in this case, but any major tool has got to be how do we bring all these different pieces of work together into one place? I think this idea of convergence makes so much more sense today, instead of just saying we're just a task management tool and here's where all your tasks live. That's super easy to replace. That's not that high value of a problem today compared to how high value that problem might have been a couple years ago. And so I think this idea that Zeb has of hey, all these tools are going to converge together, and it with how much we will be using and leaning on AI to deliver so much of the work that we're doing today. It's only as good as the data that it's able to consume. And so how do we get that data centralized, as packaged up as neat and easy as possible for these tools? And so this is a long way of getting to hey, I'm in on the idea of convergence. I always have a little bit of an allergic reaction to the theme of this year is going to be convergence, and we're just going to name a word and say the same word over and over. That's a me problem. That rubs me a little bit the wrong way. Judgment. We're going to hear judgment so many times this year. And we're going to hear intelligence plus judgment. It's all right, guys, yeah, I don't care. You can say judgment, you can say discernment, you can say taste, you can say any of the buzzwords. It's all fine. But I try really hard not to let that aversion to oh, convergence is the big brand name. Like, don't let that be a turnoff to the core point. Like, what's the fundamental argument under that? And that is that we need our work to be connected, and the best tools are going to be the ones that connect them super powerfully. So, people, and a classic example of this, people love generating, and this has gone through, like, just that I've observed, 2 different sprints or spurts. It's probably just like different platforms finding out about it. First, it was like X, and then it was probably Instagram or Facebook or something. I don't know. Of like, generate a cartoon character of me, and like what based on what you know about me, and it's got your 6 different objects that represent you. What was so cool about that to people, like the big appeal there was, this is crazy that it knows what I do for work, but what I love to do for fun, and my family has this, and like I believe this, and it's merging all those things together. And I even I've asked questions about what outfit to wear, and so it knew how to dress me correctly. That's convergence. So. And there's a million different examples of that. Like that is sticking with me, and it makes me optimistic about the future for ClickUp, and why would I want to continue investing in ClickUp and not just like, hey, let's go code our own thing. I also want to code a ton of our own things. All right, let's dig into change management real quickly. So how do we roll this out for a team? First thing is you have to have a plan. You've probably seen at some point, maybe you have not, we talked a ton about our 1-3-5 formula. And so you can go through the ZenPilot website and you can see like, hey, what's the approach to this? If you go and look on like the Why ZenPilot page, you can see this horribly designed mock-up of what this looks like. Or if you go to the ClickUp implementation, you can learn about this 1-3-5 formula. The formula is really simple. We've got one goal for everybody, and that is clarity from top to bottom in the organization. Everybody knows what's expected of them, what winning looks like, and what their path is to get there. That clarity has to come from being excellent at the tools we use, the habits we employ, and the processes that we're running. All 3 of those things have to be right. And then the way that we get there is through the 5 steps of design, build, train, launch, and optimize. And so I'll just briefly walk you through how this applies to change management in your case. Design is, hey, I know how to lead people. Like at the end of design, you need to be clear on where are we going, how are we going to implement ClickUp 4.0, and how are we going to do it in a consistent way where everybody's working with the same rules of engagement, and they need to be clear on what those are and know here's the benefits of those for us. If we don't use ClickUp's My Tasks view that's built by default here because I can't templatize that across my team, and we use this global version of it here, why would that be beneficial? Well, everybody can work off of it, and we know out of the gate that it's all set up. And then, like, what's make or break? Is it make or break if I don't use that and I customize my tasks view to look exactly like this? That's not make or break to me. It's just important that it has to match up with what we're doing as a team because we're running on a specific methodology for how we deliver work. How do we set up chat channels? Like, are those set up the right way? Do we have some that are attached directly to, hey, Trader Joe's, here's all the conversation that we have about Trader Joe's. That lives in a channel, and so I know I can quickly get from here to there. But Dunder Mifflin lives somewhere totally different. Like, that's going to bother me. That is going to be problematic for me. How are we setting up and using super agents and integrations? Like, what's our strategy for that stuff? Do we use subtasks or do we not use subtasks? Are we using custom tasks types and custom fields by custom task types, or are we not? Like, all of these things really, really matter for ultimately where we're going to go. And so, from a change management perspective, giving teams clarity on here's specifically what we're going to do. We are going to use ClickUp Chat over the next month. We're making this migration from Slack or from Teams into ClickUp Chat. Here's how it's going to work. Here's the exact channels. Here's how you're going to set up your core channels section, and everything's going to be super easy to access for you. Like, that has to be the first step, is giving people clarity. The worst thing you can do is just kind of say, like, I don't know, guys, we clicked the button and now we're in ClickUp 4.0. And everyone go figure it out for a couple months, and then we'll come back and see where we go. First, you're going to cause a ton of pain in the process, and then you're going to get to a couple months down the road and say, okay, like, we got to solve something. But you've got people who are kind of bought into their solution already, and it's harder and harder to then change habits at that point. Second piece is build. So you can't just show people that. Then you've got to say, okay, and I've already built out the channels for us. I've already built the My Task. All you need to do literally is just like favorite this one thing, jump on it, and I can have you do it in 5 seconds, and you're ready to go. We're going to track time. We're going to update statuses. Like you're going to leave a comment when you can't get to something, or when there's something that changes, or when you've got something for someone to review. Like here's your very simple rules for how you're going to work together. That's part of the training process, but I've already built it. Like this is pretty easy for you to go do now. Training the team is a combination of reiterating those rules of engagement. Here's the things that are going to be important for us. If it's not in ClickUp, it didn't happen. Like that's our catchphrase. That's our number one rule. That's part of the ZenPilot methodology. And so we're going to go all in on that. But I'm going to show you what it looks like. So how the heck do I get emails into ClickUp? Or how the heck do I get my calendar to connect with ClickUp the right way? You want me to track my time, but like, how do I do that easily? How come my timesheets, like I keep getting to the end of the day and I have 3 hours tracked? So training is connecting the high level, here's our rules of engagement and our goals, down to the very granular, here's exactly how you do it in the system. And this is the step that like almost everybody misses. The teams who work with ZenPilot and have access to the ZenPilot Training Center, they get to put every single team member through the ZenPilot ClickUp certification. They do so well at onboarding team members so quickly and getting them up to speed to actually like get value out of the system for themselves and deliver value by having clean data for everybody else, because it's this step of training of like, here's explicitly how you're going to set up your setup inside ClickUp. Here's specifically how your startup routine every day is going to go, and specifically how your shutdown routine every day is going to go. Here's specifically where you use comments and where you put them. Do they go at the subtask level or the parent task level? Like there's so many intricacies. That was kind of an overstatement. Like there's not that many intricacies. What's important is like your team gets that right. The launch process is important. Like, hey, here's a clean launch. We don't launch and then try to go back and build and train for people. But like, hey, we designed it. We told you what was coming. It's all built. We trained you on it, and now you're ready, and we're into it. And then, like any good system, if you build it well, the data that you get out of it, the feedback loop. This is the coolest thing about AI right now is recursive learning. The ability for it to build, go look at what happened, learn from it, go back and do it again and again and again and again. That's what everyone is so pumped about. And the number of organizations and teams that are not even attempting to do that for their own operation, like how they operate as a team, is wild to me. Whatever system you have should be producing some data and some outputs. And you've got to look at that and say, okay, how do we do this better? How do I get people into their sweet spot? How do we find ways to get more efficient in the work that we're doing? How do we find ways to price better or to set better expectations and scope? Like the system has to do a great job of that. So I just want to spend a couple minutes sharing kind of like, hey, this is what change management looks like. Here's how to get your team bought in. I did not mean that at all as a like, hey, here's a big sales pitch for ZenPilot. We're not teaching the 1-3-5 formula because it converts people to work with ZenPilot. We're teaching the 1-3-5 formula because this works for teams. And if you do these things, you will have a much better outcome at the end of it. So that's my big push. If you want to do that with us, reach out to us, zenpilot.com/call, and happy to jump on a free call and walk you through. That's not going to be with me, but with somebody on the team here. Walk through your situation and say, hey, does this actually make sense? Like, first of all, if we zoom out, what would we do if we were in your shoes? Like, let's get clear on what the problem is and figure out what's the diagnostic, what's the diagnosis, what's the prescription, and then in the prescription, do we make sense, or should you go elsewhere / do it yourself? Or are there prerequisites like we should be there but not yet? Or yeah, heck yes, we should do this right now. Like we'll happily walk through that information with you and have that conversation. All right, that's a ton. Overall, big fan of ClickUp 4.0. You should take advantage of a ton of the feature set that's in it. Thanks for bearing with me in this very long rant on why, like just my thoughts. Obviously, you can tell I've spent a ton of time in the system, had a lot of conversations with folks. And so I'm probably way more passionate about it than just about anybody else is. So hopefully that did not bore you to death. And this is actually super useful for you as you're figuring out how to get the most out of the tool. All right. Thanks for spending time with me today. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment here, and we'll see you in the next video.